as a reminder, all participants who participate in this meeting live, like yourselves today that are logged in and present here, are eligible to earn sketch credit. We do have 2 more webinars in this webinar series, one in April on student learning objectives to support educator evaluation, and one more in May about recruitment and placement of educators. So following the conclusion of our webinar series, anyone who's participated in a live webinar will receive an email from the MOAC system to claim their sketch credit. So if you're interested in that aspect of the webinar, those emails will hit your inbox following our final webinar in the series about in the middle of May. If you have joined us through your phone today, please remember to mute your office phone so that we don't have any feedback for the rest of the participants from your office line. Also, if you're receiving any feedback on your end, it might be because you're logged in more than once or you have more than one window open with the webinar. So those are some common troubleshooting tips that we can follow this morning. If you have any other issues with technology or anything, go ahead and pop a question in the Q&A. We'll use that to interact with you throughout the webinar today, as well as that's also your opportunity to interact with us with any questions about the content. We can respond to you individually through the Q&A, or also if there's a question that might benefit the whole group, we can respond that way as well. So please don't hesitate to interact with us through the webinar, through the Q&A pod today. That's a great way for us to help get your questions answered. So today's goals, and I hit some of those logistic things already that we're talking about today. We are also recording this webinar, and we'll post this on our MDE YouTube site as well as our MDE webpage in the coming weeks after we send it through the ADA compliance process. In the meantime, we can also provide a recording for anyone that's interested in a recording of the webinar. So today we're going to talk about some things that help you make considerations for placements, explore some sample staffing scenarios and how to problem solve some difficult decisions there. We're going to talk also about intervention programs and how using non-certified personnel works into your placement plan, and also how to staff those online and virtual courses and what considerations need to be made there when we're making placements for those educators. Again, we really want to appreciate you joining us today and hope that this can be a connection point not only today, but in the future. So our last slide of our presentation deck today is our contact information. So please feel free to reach out to any of us in the future if we can be helpful for you in your placement. And again, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Vic Bugni, who's going to lead the next section of our webinar.
Good morning, everyone. I want to echo Joe's comments and thank you all for joining. As he did reference, there are documents down below that you can pull up, and we will be referencing throughout our meeting today. And also in the web link spot, there is a link to the permits and placement page. Okay, I was just told I was a little unclear.
You might want to take my mic.
All right, hope that's a little bit better. As we look at these things and move forward, I also want to thank those who are with me today. Brian Laskie from Pupil Accounting will be presenting some information today, along with Greg Dion and Eric Lipinski have also joined us. They're out of our curriculum and instruction unit. So thanks to them, and they will be discussing a little bit later on. But again, as Joe referenced, the Q&A box, feel free to go ahead and type any questions in there. We'll try to get to those, but we do have a very short time this morning, so it's going to be just a quick overview of some things, and then we can run some content later. As Joe referenced, we will be recording the meeting. The sketches are available, and I really want to push people to look at that permits and placement page. This is a live link. You can click on that, or when you have time, find that, because as we talk about placement and what the changes have been and are going to be, that is the spot where a lot of our information will be updated throughout the upcoming months and years. So first thing that I wanted to address is what's currently in place. Last August 16th, a memo was sent out with regards to the requirements for highly qualified being removed. And then on October 11th, a clarification memo came out because that question was still in the rep reporting. And so although highly qualified requirements were removed, we still have requirements in Michigan rule and legislation that says a teacher must hold the endorsement and be certified for the placement that they have. So it gets very confusing because the teacher currently does need to hold the endorsement or a valid permit in order to have placement there. So I would reference the documents on the permits and placement page. Those do kind of try to help spell that out. And we're currently in a transition time. So what's in existence is the appropriate placement design team. Members of this team, there's about 35 people from throughout the state, ranging from teachers to ISD administrators to local administrators from large districts, small districts. About 14% of our team is from the Upper Peninsula, people from partnership districts, and they have come together and we're working on trying to figure out what requirements and guidance need to be in place for the placement of staff. Our timeline is that we're hoping to have guidance out the start of the academic 1920 year for review, not necessarily to start placement, but to have people look at that information, give us feedback. We'll pull that in during the 1920 year, and then hopefully we can have this guidance and the updates done for the 2020-2021 academic year. That is definitely, that is approximately 1 year prior to when we'll start seeing some new certification and the updates with the certification. So we hope to have that in a year before we could see those out routes come through. While we're through this time, we have the permit system that's in place that has been updated, that many of you have utilized and looked at. But then we also have the considerations that we'll talk about today as we move forward. This team has determined a lot of considerations for their work. What is designed must create equitable access for all students to a well-trained, well-skilled, high-content knowledge teacher. It must hold some flexibilities at the same times for large schools or even positions that, large schools, small schools, or positions that are difficult to fill. As we move forward, we know the reports that have been out, and so we'll take a look at some of those as this team moves forward. And one thing that was very interesting that I was just speaking about this morning with MDE leadership is that the group has determined whatever is decided must be manageable and must be workable for all. So in other words, people have to be able to understand the system. And you know, I kind of chuckle at that, but it's definitely what has to happen, because we did have some difficult and some large misunderstandings with regards to highly qualified. So So that team's there. We're in place. We're working. I know just by looking at some of the participants, some of the APDT members are joining us today, and so I want to give a shout out to all of them and thank them for their time. In the meantime, we do have some considerations, and so through the department with feedback from many stakeholders around, we've looked at placement considerations. So when we look at placement, with highly qualified being gone, we're looking at appropriately placed educators. And the considerations that are about, we've kind of looped into two different tiers. The first tier being the curriculum that's being taught to the student, to the K-12 students, the credit that's being awarded to the K-12 students, and the context in which the course is being offered. So what is the funding? What is the allocation for the course? Is it a CTE course, a special ed course? And then tier 2 considerations, and we struggled over this a little bit because these are required. So we can't say that these come next or second thought. They are requirements. They're legal requirements of districts. You have to have certification for the course that matches and aligns, and you have to be able to code the course. So that course needs to be coded in the rep, and it needs to be represented of what the content in the course actually is. So I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint real quick and bring up a document for you to look at. And this document is it's the Proper Placement Considerations document. And so you'll see that as we move through this document, it outlines those tiered considerations and what's there. This document will be live, should be live next week. We were hoping it would go up today. The only difference with it is that we were kind of looking at ADA compliance before we post it, and we hit a little snafu there. So we're going to get that corrected, and this document may go up anywhere from today to next Friday. So it should be up within a week. This resource is meant to help provide some scenarios on what's there and what we can take a look at. So if we think of these considerations as we move through, we can work to design a course. And so the document has examples in there. The first one that we talk about is the World History and Geography course. So when we look at the curriculum that's being taught, the standards would be aligned to those. Look at the credit that the local district wants to award, and this is an area that does become tough because local districts get to determine when and how a student earns credit. But typically, if someone wanted to offer a credit for this course and have it be a social studies credit, this document will help you walk through what's there. So you'll notice that we have the RX and CX teacher, the social studies and social science endorsed teacher, that would be available, and then always there is a permit. Then we move into our tier 2, the reporting and coding, and what's there for a district. So if I go to the second example, this is one that comes up quite often across my desk with regards to yearbook. How are we going to staff a yearbook class? And although it's spelled out in the quick reference guidance, this is one that can help us to understand what it is that we're looking at. Is the course a graphic arts course? Is the course a writing course? How is credit being rewarded to the students? What does it look like? So in here we reference this, students taking the course will earn not only the valuable skills, but the credit awarded to the K-12 students would be considered a local credit or an elective. So not necessarily one that aligns with the Michigan Merit Curriculum. And we get a lot of questions on this and how this moves forward. So the context of the course you'll see, and in these three scenarios, all the context is the same. We're talking general fund courses, all students included, students with IEPs, students with 504s, all funded through general district funds, and done face-to-face. And the reason that these scenarios are all there in that format is because if it is an online course, there may be additional adjustments that could take place, and Greg and Eric will talk about that. Or if it is a course that's just for special education, there may be some additional flexibilities there too. This one we get very in-depth with regards to although the course does not have a specific focus on individual students and is granting local or elective credit, the district will need to ensure that the teacher endorsed at the grade level for the students assigned to the course. In addition, the endorsements will need to be the first that the districts focus on specific set of standards. So if this course were heavy writing and were offered for English credit, or could be offered to one student for English credit, then we would suggest that that teacher have an English endorsement. If it were for a graphics design credit, we would suggest that that teacher hold a graphics design or an arts ed endorsement. And so, again, this is where it becomes a little bit difficult because districts have different things for different students. They through the competency lens, take on some other aspects. But we also in here talk about how to code that course and where it could be coded. So if it were a journalism course, we would code that with the BC code, and then we would follow the aspects of what a teacher needs for a BC coded course. And that would be there. These are things that many of you have worked with throughout. Example C in here is focused upon a STEM class. And with the new science standards, I know this is a very hot topic with STEM courses and with physical science courses. We do have a physical science endorsement, but a lot of times I go back when I get the question to what is the curriculum being taught. One of the last questions I had on a physical science course, as I went through these considerations with the staff members, they said, well, really, the first semester is an applied chemistry and the second semester is an applied physics. The credit granted would be that. We would do half a chemistry credit for first semester and half a physics credit for second semester. And so with that done, then we were able to say, okay, a chemistry teacher for first semester, a physics teacher for second semester. Of course, our DX and DI would be available for both. If you didn't have someone who was available for placement during the time needed, a permit would be permissible, and the district could apply for one of the appropriate permits, either a full year basic or a full year shortage, or in some cases even a daily permit and an extension depending upon how long. Those are very easy to obtain, and those kind of help through. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. I hope you're kind of reading through some of this example to take a look at what's currently available and the importance of threading all of those 5 considerations together. Those of you who've been in HR for a while, you'll notice that those 5 considerations are very close to our 6 C's in the document that originally came out with that. So like I said, this document is available. Also at the end, we do have a graphic outlining the considerations and really for the most part, the same questions that I ask a lot of people as we talk through their different creative courses. When we're offering a Spanish culture class and they want to look at theater and literature in Spanish, what type of teacher can teach that? And we go through all of these questions again, looking at our Tier 1 considerations, and then we reference how to hit Tier 2. So this document should be available possibly as early as today, maybe as late as next Friday. Please don't quote me on that. I am hoping. but I have the teams working on ADA right now. So those are our heavy tiered considerations, what we want to look at, how we go through these things. I'm told I have a question, but I don't see it.
Okay, we have a question that says, is the math endorsement required due to the course earning credit in that subject area? And so if science credit was being earned, a science endorsement would then be required?
Yes, in general. So if a math credit is being awarded and the content of the course focuses on the math standards, then in general, yes, the math endorsement would be needed. Similar with science. If a biology credit is being awarded and the content of the course is heavy biology, understanding that integration does happen in our courses to increase student engagement and other aspects. But if the content is biology, if the credit is biology, then yes, in general, we would say a biology endorsement would be needed. Thank you very much for that question. I think Wendy has a question too, but it's not popping up on mine. I can't read it with the blue.
Wendy has a question talking about an issue in science. One issue in science, other than the high school certification shortages in the middle school area, many curriculum resources are general science, but secondary teachers often have majors. Is this being addressed by the design team?
In short, yes, it's being addressed by the design team. We're looking at what it is as we integrate. We know science and social studies are both two areas that are of high concern. And as we look at these levels for middle school and for those integrated courses, what is it that we need? Is it needed for a DX? Is it needed for a DI? We have many of our teachers in science who have, let's say, a chemistry and a biology endorsement, and currently they're limited in their scope. So the design team is looking at how does that pan out, what comes into play there, and what needs to happen for a skill set aspect of it. So another question from Matt, if we offer an integrated ELA and history class and offer credit for both ELA and history, can we cover that with only a history teacher? I would wonder about the integration and what's happening there. My initial aspect on that would be we would want to grab a permit for the English portion of that credit. But this is where we would go back up and look at the context of the course. What are the subjects that are being taught, and what exactly is it that we're looking at? For a course like that, many of our teachers are on a professional certificate just because of timing and things like that. And if they are, a full year shortage permit would be the question, or the permit that I would kind of think of. Okay, so as we look at these and move forward, I want to invite Mr. Laskie to speak with us now. Brian again is out of our pupil accounting unit, and he and I have been working together quite a bit on what about intervention courses and what about things like that. And so, Brian?
Okay, thank you, Vic. I'm just going to do a mic check here. It looks like I'm coming through clearly. So I work with state aid and school finance. Basically, concentration here is in pupil accounting. And one of the things that came up recently that we've been working on between our two offices is how to address counting instructional time when that instructional time is being provided by a non-certified personnel. And so I guess what is at the crux of the issue here is that the definition for countable instructional time is provided in Section 6, subsection 8 of the State School Aid Act, and that defines it as the time of day when a student and a teacher, certified teacher, are together and instruction is taking place. We know that this is is practical for most situations, other than when you have a student who is pulled out from the classroom, who will be receiving some remedial services from a non-certified professional, like a parapro or someone that's a specialist in providing that type of instructional service. So we took that issue back to the department and tried to take it apart and decide or determine how we could provide or allow these services to be provided and still remain countable for instructional time. And in essence, what we found was that there was a parallel between this issue and what we've had in the past with our non-certified personnel being used out in the field for different purposes. And in taking a look at our existing documentation, we determined that really there's two things that matter. And to understand that better, we have to understand what meaningful direction is, as well as what supervision means, as it would relate to the circumstance. So meaningful direction is when someone is there along with this paraprofessional to help plan and coordinate the lessons. That someone is a certified teacher. They're also presenting the initial lesson to students. The paraprofessional then is coming in to build up that student's learning. They're going to identify complementing and supplementing or reinforcing instruction that needs to be provided. The paraprofessional could take up those identified supplements and provide that to the student themselves. They're also going to specify the method, the material, and the technique to be used. So that is what meaningful direction is. It's essentially a certified teacher there to guide the paraprofessional through the process of providing specified services to students outside of the direct supervision of that certified teacher. So now we get into what supervision means in the context of this scenario we're talking about. Someone who's going to evaluate the performance of that non-certified personnel. So they're owning ultimately, the work that's coming out of this paraprofessional. They're also going to review the work plans and evaluate the student's progress and make any determinations necessary if those services need to be adjusted to help the student learn better. So those are the two important definitions that someone that would be engaging in this type of pull-out service needs to specifically understand for the purpose of ensuring that this is going to be countable instructional time. So our last correlation that I can give you, and sometimes this is the best to help folks understand what we're trying to accomplish here. We're essentially viewing these pull-out services in a similar manner as to what we view virtual instruction. So when a student is engaged in virtual instruction, they're going to be going through material that has been developed by a certified teacher. And that certified teacher, while they're not necessarily providing direct instruction to the student of the material, they're definitely there to provide supports, for the material being provided. So they become kind of secondary in the process, but they understand exactly what is being provided to the students and act as the resource to the student should any additional questions pop up. So with that said, let me just go through this scenario one more time, and I'll make sure that we all understand what we can now do with pull-out services, because I know this is kind of a big thing to wrap your head around the first time we go through. So if in the circumstance that you have, let's say, reading specialists within your district, and those reading specialists are non-certified teachers or non-certified personnel, and you are going to, on a regular basis, pull a student out of the instructional environment, let's say that's happening during Tier 2 instructional time, and that pull-out time is going to be used to provide remediation to the student. That is going to be allowable instructional time if and when that instructional time is supervised by and coordinated by a certified teacher. So that is it in a nutshell. And if there are any questions at this time, we can take those.
So I do know that we've got one question that comes through, Monica, that I want to save for Greg when he speaks, but and Jennifer, we do see that there may be an issue. We need to make sure that we're speaking loudly, but it looks like Tammy has a question.
Tammy is looking for where the paraprofessionals requirement document can be found. I'm certain that that's at or out on OEE's website. Oh, I see. Yeah, it looks like it's downloadable file section at the bottom of your screen. So can you see that, Dan?
Yeah, correct. The documents that you see today.
Today, all excluding that the one that I had up originally, are down below, or they're also located on the permits and placement webpage. I think if I click on this, you're all going to get mad at me because I'm going to open a web page on your computer. So yes, Big Brother is there. And if I do that, I believe the link has popped up. So what you should see now is the link to our permits and placement page. At the top of that web page is many of our different resources around permits, who's eligible, how to obtain them. We also have updates in CTE. The third section of that is our placement guidance. That first link there, appropriate placement of educators, is kind of a sounding board. It holds a lot of different areas. And then the third link from the bottom in that section is the the third link from the bottom is the utilization document that Brian was just covering. And very helpful because we do get a lot of questions. Does intervention time count as instructional time with regards to the rep, and can we still count that? And what we just heard Brian say is yes, if it is under meaningful direction and supervision of a certified teacher. So take a look at that page. That's going to be one that many of you will want to reference throughout. Now, the downfall is when I click on that link, I can open the website on your computer, but I can't close it. So we'll move back to the webinar. And our next slide for today, I want to invite Greg, Dion, and Eric Lipinski to discuss some of our online and computer-based instruction. This again is a document. It's down below. It's on the permits page. I believe on the permits page it's just called online instruction. But Eric and Greg?
Sure, thanks, Vic. You know what? Over time, there are a lot of different iterations of online learning types, online programs, online platforms, way to deliver education that have kind of emerged. And so, you know, we've tried to work closely with OEE and with pupil accounting to kind of try to keep up with that, knowing that, you know, sometimes there's some flexibility needed, but also knowing that we want to make sure that we've got the right folks that are delivering the instruction and helping the students. So, you know, we kind of look at a couple things. How's the instruction occurring, and then who is doing the instruction? And really what it boils down to is we're looking at a teacher of record and a mentor. For the teacher of record, that's somebody that holds a valid Michigan teaching certificate or a permit issued by the department for the grade level that they're delivering the instruction in. The certificate they should be endorsed in the subject area for the course, and if applicable, highly qualified. Teacher must also have a personal identification code or a PIC that is issued through SEBI and must be employed by the district unless the course is provided by Michigan Virtual. So that's the teacher of record, and the mentor then is a professional employee of the district, and essentially that person is monitoring student progress, making sure that the student has access to technology, maybe helping them troubleshoot on some of those things. That person that is available for assistance, so if the student needs something that maybe is not involving core instruction, you know, they're there to help the student and also to make sure that they have access to that teacher of record. So if they're engaging with some content, then they need some support specific to that mentor can help. Now, the mentor can also be the same person as that teacher of record if they, you know, meet the definition of a teacher of record, and the district is the provider for the course. So essentially, when it comes to the teacher of record and the mentor, that's really what we're looking at. Eric's going to talk a little bit more about the facilitation and instruction.
Yeah, so as the teacher of record can fulfill really one of two roles, either a facilitator or the provider of instruction. So just breaking those two down, if the teacher of record is fulfilling the role of instructor, typically they're using an online learning service. It could be live streaming, online learning platform, or in conjunction with courseware or software. Typically the teacher of record is going to be endorsed in the corresponding grade level and subject area. There's some other avenues to be appropriately permitted, which I'm not necessarily the expert on that. But a rep reporting code for the subject being taught has to be utilized for the assignment. And some examples of instruction are kind of what you see on the screen there. Assessing student progress, reteaching material, guiding student work, evaluation, and that development of curriculum. On the other side, if the teacher of record is fulfilling the role of a facilitator, that's where the courseware or software is being used for the delivery of content. The school or the district must at least provide a teacher of record who's employed by the school or district to facilitate learning through that courseware or software. In the case of the teacher of record fulfilling the role of facilitator, the teacher has to minimally hold a valid Michigan endorsement matching the grade level of the students using that courseware. Or again, there are some other ways to be appropriately permitted on that, but that's typically what we see. Appropriate endorsement in the discipline area is recommended, not necessarily required. There's a reporting code in the rep. It's 000ZW, which is used for the facilitator assignment. And a few examples of facilitation, again, are kind of on this top of the screen there. Looks like they scrolled down, but transferring of grades, referring students to the actual content experts, documenting completion and student progress, doing some of the classroom management type things, and then also providing that tech support potentially. So, yeah, that's the breakdown for the teacher of record. I'm not sure, is there anything else we wanted to cover on that, Greg?
No, I don't think so, unless we have questions from the group. I think Brian Laskie still on, so maybe if there's something that's more specific to that, he can help us out too.
Yeah, so Greg, there was one question that came through. You had referenced highly qualified, and you know, the question came up, what is highly qualified? And so what I kind of want to, in summary, what's tough is breaking language. So in summary, when Eric and Greg talk about someone who's providing instruction, if they are providing instruction but using online resources, but they are the provider of the instruction, they need to hold the appropriate endorsement or a permit. And that permit or the endorsement can help us through that. If they're only facilitating because the content knowledge we're saying is kind of held by the program, and I'm looking at Brian to make sure I'm kind of getting this correct, but if the content knowledge is held by the program and the teacher is only facilitating, transferring grades, doing some of the things that are in that list on this document, then the teacher needs to be endorsed at the grade level of the students that are there. But we're kind of replacing highly qualified with the content in the program instead, and so that comes through. But another question, Greg, that came up was a little bit earlier, and it doesn't deal with online instruction, but it deals with foreign language, and that's a little bit more of a curriculum and instruction. So the question was, what about small schools and foreign language? Is there something we can do with options there? Would you be able to address that from the staffing standpoint? If the content is foreign language, if it is foreign language, we're looking for that endorsement. But do you have some other options, Greg?
Well, I think if there is, I think it kind of depends. So if this is, you know, a district that is, you know, struggling because maybe they don't always have students to run full classes or something like that. You know, I think there's a lot of flexibility that's available for districts in terms of, you know, how they might augment some instruction with something online, or they might leverage, you know, something that's out there in terms of a class that maybe is available on the course catalog. Or a combination of those things. So, you know, in those situations, you know, when I get those questions from the field, you know, I kind of urge people to look at, you know, what kind of flexibility they can provide for the student. So, you know, if it's a combination of those things, you know, I'm always a little cautious about, you know, somebody just putting a student onto, you know, Rosetta Stone or something like that, and just letting them fend for themselves. But I think if it makes sense to look at what's available through open education resources or courses that are available, and then support that with an instructor, you know, I understand that sometimes that is what's needed. And I hope I answered the question. I thought that's kind of what they were getting at.
This is Brian. Just to throw out one more option for districts. If you're struggling to find people to fulfill your foreign language requirement, you might look to see if you have a neighboring district, or maybe even one that's not neighboring, who you could do distance learning with. That's a technology that's been around for a long time, and it would definitely allow you to take advantage of professionals who are out in the field who could provide some sort of live instruction to students, so that it's not just an online course.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. We've definitely seen that done in the past.
Yeah, I think it's important. There are a lot of different options that are available for different districts, different sizes of all sizes, really, as we look at these things. One thing that I want to bring everyone's attention to is at the bottom of this online instructional document, there are 2 links that sit there. The adherence and decision tree, and so I'm thinking if you want to click on that link, and this one, I'm sorry, I can't open that for you, but it's the first link there at the bottom. If you click on that, it's kind of a flow chart that is there and available, and people can kind of look at the different sections, the cyber schools, the blended learning, and the virtual schools, distance learning, and what's there. And it will kind of help you flow through, and not only does it tell you the description of the setting, but also what are the requirements with regards to the teacher, and then what are the requirements with regards to evaluation, because evaluation of online instruction and teachers that way are all kind of difficult. And then we do get into how to code it in the rep, and Eric referenced a little bit of that, and then that mentor level. Is a mentor needed, or is a mentor suggested, and how does that go? Because that's a whole nother. The second link there is an online decision tool. If you click on that one, it kind of takes that flow chart through an interactive tool that our group came together, and you can click, okay, am I looking at a cyber school, or am I looking at virtual learning? And you can click through, and it will help you to make those determinations of what the setting actually is, who the teacher is, and it kind of goes through those same considerations that we were talking about earlier today. So those are 2 other resources. Please don't be afraid to utilize the links that are in these documents as we keep moving forward. So coming back, I know to utilize a phrase that happens quite often, you've probably been fed through a fire hose with regards to the different information that's coming forward. The considerations, the intervention programs, and utilization of paraprofessionals, and still looking at instructional time, online learning. On the screen now you should see all of our contact information. Those are our direct emails. Please feel free, reach out to us. I know all 5 of us are more than happy to get in touch with you and collaborate, and then bring forward how this looks, how it deals with evaluation, how it deals with pupil accounting, how it deals with the curriculum world, and how to make sure that we have everything and everyone on the same page as we move forward. We've got about 7 minutes left, and that's exactly where we wanted to be. We want to make sure that if there are any additional questions, you get those typed in, and we're able to chat with you right now with possibly some specific scenarios. I also want to encourage you to take a look and download all of those resources there. Those are great documents, but realize that once you download them, a new version may come out, and that will be on that permits and placement page. Some things that we didn't touch base on but are also on that page are alternative education, alternative settings. We have new resource out for that. Special education is an hour-long topic in itself. There is a document that is on the website that we've worked with the Office of Special Ed with that kind of helps us talk through special ed programs and resource programs, what the requirements are, and then what best practice is also with that. So please feel free to take a look at all those, and if anyone has questions, we'll look for those to come up, and then we will We'll answer those. We'll be on for about 6 more minutes. So the first question that we've got coming through from Christine, it looks like a special ed emphasis webinar. We don't have one planned right now, but that's definitely something that we may look into and see what we can do for you. So great suggestion. Thank you. Thank you, Valerie, for joining us. Thanks so much. I want to thank everyone for joining us and letting us be a part of your day. Wendy?
Yeah, she looks like she wants to know if we can talk a little bit more about how to code a course to match teacher cert.
So coding a course to match the teacher cert, it's more about making sure that we code a course to match the course content. What is there? So we here dabble a little bit with that, and we can help you to some questions, like Eric had referenced. If it's an online course and the person is a facilitator, one of the codes is the ZW, and we utilize that. If it's a math course, it would be an EX code, and if it's math content, math teacher, EX code on the endorsement. But much of that comes through the rep reporting, and that is a different organization, that's CEPI. But they have been a part of all of this planning, and we're more than happy to go through it. So Wendy, if you do have specifics, just go ahead, reach out and let us know.
Oh, she says more importantly, it can be done, yes, not needing online, specifically science or social studies.
So with the science and social studies, that's, like I said, those are areas that we really know are of high importance. So this is where we look at the content. If the content is greatly life science, if the district is awarding biology credit or life science credit, then we would look for that life science coding, that life science endorsement on it. This is where it becomes difficult with history and world geography versus social studies. The comment came up earlier with regards to middle school. Many of our middle school courses are kind of what I'll call feeder courses or highly integrated. Our middle school social studies course may have economics, some government, some history, some geography in it. So that would be truly integrated, and we would be looking for a social science or a social studies code on it, and then also holding the teacher would then hold the social science or the social studies endorsement, the CX or RX. If that teacher is not available for the position, then we can always utilize the permit system and be able to have something there. Those permit, like I said, as the APDT team kind of works to design, if there's going to be any adjustments to that, we hope to have that out for district review this fall. Heather says, if we assign a teacher of record as a facilitator rather than an instructor, then we are no longer required to have a mentor. For instance, if the course is delivered online and the TOR, who is a facilitator, doesn't hold the content knowledge but can assist in getting content expert assistance before we have used a mentor role. So this I'm going to defer a little bit to Brian or Greg and Eric, because it does deal with that mentor. That 21F is you're required to have a mentor assigned to a course that's aligned with that, but the teacher of record could act as the mentor. And the facilitator and the instruction provider can both be a teacher of record. But Brian, do you want to hit the mentor a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I kind of actually wonder whether or not Heather is speaking to a situation that we covered lightly earlier, which is where you may not have someone with the expertise in-house to necessarily provide the content. They are still a teacher of record, and the content being provided through the online course was developed by a certified teacher. This teacher of record that you have assigned isn't necessarily the most ideal, but they're a teacher of record nonetheless at the grade level, so that meets our membership requirements. And the content in the course was designed by a certified teacher who was endorsed, for that content area. So we're good with that. Where you may run into issues, and this is where you probably have to dig deep, in your teacher's staff there internally, is to find someone who can answer questions that you may not be able to field as a teacher of record, who isn't necessarily endorsed or trained in that specific content area. Who's going to answer the questions that are more advanced than that person can handle? So if you have someone in mind and that person may not be available for the instructional time, I think you probably could work out something to have this second certified teacher who has that type of endorsement knowledge to be able to provide assistance where needed. Does that make sense, Heather? So you're able to do this still because you have the teacher of record who's certified at that grade level. And the content, within that online course was designed by someone who's appropriately certified and endorsed. The third person who you're going to bring in is someone who's going to help address the questions that come up through that course that the teacher of record can't handle him or herself.
Thanks, Brian. We do have a couple other questions. Wendy's referencing badges, which is something that we'll refer to as micro-credentialing. The Office of Educator Excellence has actually about 3 work groups, I believe, that are looking at professional development all around, one of those components being micro-credentials. The appropriate placement design team is aware of that, and please hold, more to come is really kind of our answer with regards to where that sits and how and if that can be utilized or done. Beth references minimum qualification required for para-educators, i.e. work keys and associate degree. So that falls within ESSA and currently is tied to instructional paraprofessionals for math and ELA that are either in a school-wide building or funded through Title I. Many local districts have their own requirements for the paraeducators, but those are still in place as before. ESSA actually says that if a title-funded paraeducator is, they fell to the same standard as needed prior to. So we know that there are some issues with regards to the work keys test where they no longer offer one portion that was approved. Currently, the only test that's available new is the ETS paraprofessional or that associate's degree. But I do encourage you to work with your field consultant, your title services field consultant, if you do have a specific person, to make sure that that requirement is in place for them. And then Monica brings up a teacher with a biology degree employed through a permit and trying to get full endorsement, and then maybe some of their credits not being accepted. That falls on our ed prep providers. So basically in Michigan, in order to earn an endorsement, you need to do both a program and any associated testing. That could be a traditional route program. It could be an alternative route program. We're working very hard with our ed prep providers to have them work at competency levels or to have them review these endorsements and these qualifications that people bring to them. and they do take a look at them. And so once you complete the program, or as you complete the program, what happens is if it's Michigan-based, the educator would get recommended to the department for that endorsement, and then the department would grant it upon that recommendation. And so we can take a look at things like that. But I do encourage people to look at the alternative routes along with traditional routes. Both traditional routes, alternative routes, or what we refer to as residency programs are available for not only initial certification, but also endorsement adding. So I want to thank everybody so much. We're about 5 minutes over. And so I think I've got all the questions answered. So thank you so much for being involved. Again, you have our contact information. Feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we'll be happy to address any concerns. And don't forget that permits and placement page is the page that's going to be updated a lot and hold much of this content, so check in frequently. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day, a wonderful weekend, and keep it classy.